Welcome to the Sheru Files. They say if you want to understand power, you must follow the money. Throughout history, wars have been fought, governments have risen and fallen, and leaders have changed the course of nations. But behind many of these events lies a question that few people stop to ask. Who made it possible? On this channel, we explore the hidden side of history, the stories, mysteries, and unanswered questions that continue to fascinate researchers around the world. If you enjoy uncovering forgotten history, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others who are just as curious as you are. Today we begin our first investigation. When people think of Adolf Hitler's rise to power, they often think of political speeches, mass rallies, and a nation in crisis. But could there have been other forces working behind the scenes? To find out, we must travel back to a time when Germany was struggling to recover from war, and when the decisions of a few powerful individuals would help shape the future of the world. So let's follow the money and begin our story. December 1996. A pristine Swiss train cuts through the winter landscape toward Bern, home of the Swiss Federal Archives. On board, an American expatriate 15 years settled in Zurich speaks quietly about a scandal that had shaken the world that spring. The question was simple yet devastating. How had Swiss banks held on to money deposited in good faith by Holocaust victims for over 50 years, stonewalling every claim, even demanding death certificates for people murdered in Auschwitz? A man who understood Switzerland well summed it up in 2 words: concept deficit. Not a financial shortfall. A moral one. A failure to grasp that the world had changed, and that no nation, not even a neutral one, exists in isolation. In January 1997, outgoing Swiss President Jean-Pascal Delamura's publicly called Jewish organizations demands for a Holocaust compensation fund, extortion and blackmail. He later apologized. But the damage was done. The mask had slipped. Declassified intelligence reports tell a darker story. The Swiss National Bank accepted gold looted from the national treasuries of Nazi-occupied countries, and from the bodies of dead Jews. They bought it outright. They laundered it. They sent it onward to other neutral nations. Swiss banks supplied the foreign currency, the hard Swiss francs, that the Third Reich desperately needed to purchase vital war materials. No one in Madrid, Lisbon, Ankara, or Stockholm would accept Reichsmarks. The Nazis' trading partners demanded Swiss francs. And the Swiss delivered. Swiss banks were the financial lifeline that allowed Nazi economic officials to channel their plundered wealth into safe Swiss vaults. They financed Nazi foreign intelligence operations, funding German front companies operating in Spain and Portugal. At the Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Nazi and Allied officials sat side by side, conducting business, while their countrymen slaughtered each other on the battlefields of Europe. There is a powerful argument, supported by historians, that without the considerable efforts of Swiss bankers to keep the Nazi war machine funded, the Second World War could have ended several years earlier. Particularly after the Wehrmacht's catastrophic defeats at Stalingrad and Kursk, the final death spasms of Operation Barbarossa, Hitler's ruinous invasion of the Soviet Union. Other neutral nations traded with the Reich. Spain and Portugal supplied tungsten. Turkey supplied chrome. Sweden supplied steel. But Turkey eventually severed diplomatic ties with the Nazis. Sweden and Denmark organized a mass rescue of thousands of Danish Jews, hiding them, transporting them by boat to safety in the autumn of 1943. No other neutral country played as crucial a role in sustaining the Nazi war machine as Switzerland. The Nazis needed hard currency. Swiss banks provided it. It was that simple, and that damning. Switzerland's neutrality, enshrined in international treaties, demanded impartiality toward both sides. For the Swiss, a nation of 4 languages, 4 cultures, neutrality was more than a policy. It was identity. The glue holding a fractured nation together. As Peter Burkhardt of the Swiss government's wartime task force stated, neutrality is part of the Swiss identity. It is like a myth. Every country needs a common myth, especially Switzerland, where there is no shared culture or language. Swiss identity is built on common history, common values, common experience. Yet even that myth had a price. The Federal Council, ruling with wartime dictatorial powers, set the policy of economic collaboration with Nazi Germany. In August 1942, it closed Switzerland's borders to Jewish refugees entirely. While much of the Swiss public held little sympathy for the Third Reich, the political and financial elite made their choice. The J stamp, the mark of shame stamped into Jewish passports across Nazi-controlled Europe, was introduced in 1938, a full year before the war began. It came after pressure from Swiss officials desperate to stem the tide of Jewish refugees crossing their borders. Realpolitik had triumphed over humanitarian tradition. Swiss Foreign Minister Marcel Pilot-Golas delivered a speech in the aftermath of France's fall in May 1940 that effectively steered Switzerland toward accommodation with Berlin. He became known, in the words of historian Guido Kohler, as the man who would align Swiss policy along lines defined by Germany. His signal to the banking community was clear: there was money to be made in the new reality of Nazi-dominated Europe. Yet the picture was never entirely black. Switzerland harbored Allied intelligence operations, tolerating the espionage networks of the OSS, forerunner of the CIA, operating out of Bern. It allowed the World Jewish Congress and the U.S. War Refugee Board to operate freely on Swiss soil, rescuing Jewish refugees from Nazi persecution. It was neutral ground, an oasis of peace in a continent consumed by war. Swiss diplomat Charles Lutz, stationed in Budapest, placed 50,000 Jewish lives under Swiss diplomatic protection as the Holocaust entered its final, most savage phase. Police Chief Paul Gruninger altered passports to save 3,600 Jews from deportation in 1938. His reward was dismissal, loss of pension, and a life of poverty. He died in 1971. He was not legally rehabilitated until 1995. The Allies themselves sold over SF 3 billion in gold to Swiss banks, nearly twice the Nazi total of SF 1.64 billion. Unlike the German gold, theirs was not stolen. Almost 250,000 refugees passed through Switzerland during the war. Among them, approximately 22,000 Jewish refugees found sanctuary, though many others were turned back into the hands of Nazi and Vichy French officials. Three forces combined to finally drag this history into the light: the end of the Cold War, America's Freedom of Information Act, and the alliance between the World Jewish Congress and U.S. Senator Alphonse D'Amato. Archives opened. Survivors testified. The trickle of documents became a flood. By the autumn of 1996, the dam broke. A joint commission was established between the WJC and Swiss banks to examine dormant accounts. The Swiss government launched its own independent investigation, with a mandate to report within 5 years on the full scope of Switzerland's wartime economic relationship with the Third Reich. Switzerland's concept deficit, its failure to reckon with its own wartime shadow, was finally, slowly beginning to close. So, this is only the beginning of the story. In the next episode, we'll take a closer look at the individuals and financial circles whose names have been linked to Hitler's rise to power. Was it all a coincidence, or was there something more behind it? Join us in the next video to find out. Until then, take care.